You're not going to believe this story. In 1891, a factory girl from Boston crossed nearly the whole country to marry a man she'd never met. She thought she was escaping danger. Instead, she walked straight into the middle of it, because underneath her new husband's ranch, under the kitchen floor she cooked on, and the bed she slept in, there were tunnels. Tunnels that had already taken one woman's life. And if she hadn't realized what was happening in time, those tunnels would have taken hers too. Stay with me, because to understand how she ended up with a pistol in her hand, standing in the dark with dynamite at her feet, you have to start with the ad that changed everything. Her name was Amelia Price, 19 years old. Smelled like machine oil and soap half the time. Fingers calloused from tying thread on spindles in her father's factory. She'd grown up watching men make deals in offices upstairs while boys lost fingers in the machines downstairs. So when she saw the ad in the newspaper, rancher in New Mexico territory seeks respectable wife, modest means, strong character required, fair prospects, travel paid. She didn't see romance. She saw an exit sign. Her father saw something else. "Do you know how much I paid to have that advertisement printed?" he'd snapped. "You are not backing out now, Amelia." So 3 weeks later, there she was. Dust in her teeth. Hat pinned too tight. Trunk in the back of a stagecoach, watching the last bits of eastern green disappear behind her. When she finally got off at a lonely little station in the New Mexico territory, the sun felt like it was trying to bleach her bones. A man was waiting by the hitching post. Tall, hat pulled low, shirt sleeves rolled, hands that had very clearly done real work. He took off his hat when he saw her. "Miss Price?" he asked. "Yes," she managed. "I'm Marcus Hale," he said. "Welcome to San Miguel County." People in town said he was just a small ranch hand, scraping by, that he'd had to send away for a wife because no local girl wanted that life. Amelia believed that, for about one day, because on the ride to the ranch, she started to notice things. The land that was supposedly modest stretched on and on. Grassland, a creek, a cottonwood grove. The house that was supposed to be simple was big enough that sound echoed in the hallway, and the first words out of the housekeeper's mouth when she saw Amelia. "Another one," the woman whispered in Spanish, too quietly for Marcus to hear. "Dios nos ayude." Another one. Amelia didn't understand what that meant. Not that day, not until she opened the wrong door. Her second night in the house, she woke up thirsty. The wind was rattling the shutters. The big old house creaked and sighed like it was breathing. She patted down the hallway in her nightgown, candle in hand, the flame flickering with every draft. Earlier, Marcus had told her, "Stay on the main floor after dark. Some of the old cellar doors stick. Don't want you tumbling down anywhere." But there was no one around to see her, and Amelia had never been especially good at doing only what she was told. She passed the kitchen. The big iron stove was cooling. A pan of biscuits sat under a cloth on the counter. She poured herself water from the pump, and that's when she heard it. A sound from the pantry. Not a mouse, not shifting jars. A thunk, like wood against wood, under her feet. Amelia froze. "Mrs. Inez?" she called, thinking maybe the housekeeper was up late. No answer. She set her candle down and opened the pantry door. Flour barrels, shelves of jars, the usual things. And on the floorboards, near the back wall, something odd. A seam, a square cut. She moved a barrel aside with both hands, grunting a little. Underneath, a trap door handle. Every sensible thought in her brain said, "Close the pantry, go back to bed. Ask questions in the morning." She opened the trap door. Cool air washed over her, smelling like damp earth and something metallic. A narrow wooden staircase disappeared into blackness. She should have gone back for Marcus. Instead, she reached under her nightgown's hem. Yes, she'd strapped it on out of habit, even all the way out here, and pulled the little pistol her father had given her for city alleys only. She held it in one hand, the candle in the other, and took one careful step down, then another. The flame shook, throwing shadows on packed dirt walls. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a tunnel just tall enough for her to walk if she stooped. Wooden beams held up the ceiling. Some beams had splinters, old scars from tools. Others still had fresh sawdust clinging to them. The tunnel kept going, angling away from the house, into land she hadn't even seen yet. The smart thing to do would have been to turn around. Amelia took 3 more steps. The quiet down there didn't feel like normal quiet. It felt listening. She shivered. That's when she saw it. Something scratched into one of the beams at eye level. 3 letters, carved deep with a knife. Run. Her candle guttered. A board creaked somewhere deeper in the dark. A scuff of a boot? A breath? Amelia's heart slammed. She bit back a scream, turned, and ran up those stairs so fast she almost dropped the candle. She slammed the trap door shut, shoved the barrel back over it, and pressed her back to the pantry wall, breathing hard. She didn't sleep the rest of the night, because if that message on the beam wasn't for her, who had it been for? The answer came at breakfast. Amelia walked into the kitchen, trying to look normal. Marcus sat at the head of the table, coffee in hand. Mrs. Inez ladled eggs onto plates. On the sideboard, propped against a vase, was a small photograph she hadn't noticed before. A young woman, hair pinned up, dress neat, standing on this front porch. She was smiling at the camera like she expected good things from life. "Who is she?" Amelia asked before she could stop herself. Marcus's hand, halfway to his cup, paused. Mrs. Inez's eyes dropped. Marcus took a breath. "That was my first wife," he said finally. "Annie." Amelia went cold all over. He'd never mentioned being widowed. "Your first?" she repeated. "Mail-order bride," Marcus said, staring somewhere over Amelia's shoulder. "Came out from Illinois 2 years ago. House was too quiet then, too." "What happened?" Amelia asked softly. Marcus's jaw tightened. "She had a fall," he said. "In the root cellar, broke her neck." "Terrible accident," Mrs. Inez added, too quickly. It didn't sound like an accident. Amelia thought about the word on the tunnel beam. Run. She thought about the square-cut trap door under the pantry. And she thought about how the housekeeper had said, "Another one," when she'd walked in. But she didn't say any of that out loud. Not yet. Because remember, at this point, Amelia still thought Marcus might be exactly what he claimed. A man with modest means trying to start over. She had no idea that the tunnels under her feet, the ones Annie had probably found first, were full of dynamite, stolen ore, and men who'd killed to keep them hidden. 3 nights later, Amelia went back down into the dark. Not because she wanted to, because Marcus told her not to. They were standing in the hallway when he caught her looking down toward the kitchen. "If you feel any draft near the pantry at night," he said, too casually, "just shut the door. Some of the old cellars down there aren't safe. I don't want you poking around." He tried to smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Amelia had seen men at her father's factory use that same tone when they didn't want workers to look too closely at the books. She waited until Marcus rode out before dawn, saying he had to check the north fence line. As soon as he disappeared over the hill, Amelia dragged the flour barrels aside, opened the trap door, lit a lantern, tucked the pistol into her apron pocket, and climbed down. This time, she walked farther, past the run beam, past the first side passage. The air was cooler down there, but her skin was damp with sweat anyway. Every few yards, another side tunnel branched off, like ribs from a spine. She kept her left hand on the wall, counting turns in her head. 1, 2, 3. That's when she heard voices. Men's voices, muffled and echoing. She blew out the lantern instantly. Darkness swallowed her. She pressed herself into the wall, barely daring to breathe. The voices got closer. "Telling you Cutter don't care if the vein's played out," one man said. "He wants that west branch open before those federal boys start sniffing around." Another laughed. "Then he better pay on time. I ain't crawling through this rabbit hole for charity." Flint struck steel. Lantern flared around the bend. Amelia saw 2 silhouettes before she saw faces. One man was broad, nose crooked like it had been broken more than once. The other was tall, with a black scarf around his neck even in the heat. They did not look like ranch hands. No dust on their hats, no spurs. Coats that screamed city, not country. Tall Scarf said, "Cutter'll pay. He always does. Who do you think pushes Hale's hand on those shipping papers? Boy acts like he can't read past his own name, but he knows his cut." Amelia's breath stuck in her throat. They were talking about Marcus. Crooked Nose snorted. "Place gives me the creeps. First that Annie girl, now this new one." He leered. "You seen her?" "No," Tall Scarf said. "Don't plan to. Cutter says wives are good for 3 things: signatures, sons, and funerals." Amelia's stomach flipped. Crooked Nose laughed. "Well, first one gave him the last thing, didn't she?" "Watch your mouth," Tall Scarf snapped. "Hale's still useful. Long as he keeps signing and keeps his missus out of our way, Cutter don't care who's warming his bed. But if she wanders," Crooked Nose's boots scuffed on the dirt. "If she finds a door she shouldn't, then she'll have the same accident as the first one," Tall Scarf said coldly. "Now move. We lay the last charges tonight." Their lantern light swung away as they turned down a side shaft. Amelia waited until the glow vanished completely. Her whole body was shaking, because in 3 minutes of eavesdropping she'd learned more about her new life than in 3 weeks of letters. The tunnels weren't some harmless old cellar. The name Harlan Cutter, the railroad man, was behind all of it. Marcus was not just a bystander. His signature was on whatever was happening down here, and Annie's fall very likely wasn't a fall at all. If Amelia had any sense, she would have listened to that word carved into the beam. Run. Back up the stairs, out of the house, onto a horse, anywhere. She didn't. She crawled back to the trap door, eased it shut, pushed the barrels over it, and went looking for the one person in the house who might tell her the truth. Mrs. Inez. Amelia must have looked like she'd wrestled the basement itself when she stumbled into the kitchen. Hair down, dress dusty, hands shaking. Mrs. Inez took one look at her, at the open pantry door, at the disturbed barrels. She didn't scold. She walked calmly into the pantry. With the heel of her boot, she nudged the trapdoor closed. She dragged the flour back over it. Then she turned the key in the kitchen door, pulled the curtain over the small window, and finally faced Amelia. "You were not supposed to go down there," she said quietly. "Who decided that?" Amelia shot back, voice trembling. "Marcus or Harlan Cutter?" The housekeeper's face changed at that name. It was like Amelia had said fire in a crowded theater. "Where did you hear that?" Mrs. Inez whispered. "In the tunnel," Amelia said. "Men. They were talking about charges, veins, shipments, and Marcus, and Annie, and me." Mrs. Inez closed her eyes like a woman bracing for a blow. Then she did something that shocked Amelia more than the tunnels had. She took Amelia's hand. "Saint-to-see," she said. "Sit. If we are going to die, we may as well tell the truth first." That was how Amelia learned that Marcus wasn't Cutter's first victim, and Annie wasn't his first accident. Mrs. Inez had been in the Hale house longer than Marcus had been alive. She'd been there when Marcus's father invited the railroad men to talk about tracks and progress and opportunity. She'd been there when Harlan Cutter first arrived. Sharp suit, easy smile, eyes like cold nails. She'd watched Mr. Hale sign papers he didn't fully read, drunk on the idea of trains bringing money and power. She'd watched him die in what the town called a horse accident, after he'd started asking too many questions about his share. "The tunnels were already started when Marcus took over," she said, voice low. "Cutter told him it was just storage. Cool air, no cost. He said the railroad would run near the property, that Marcus would be rich enough to pay his father's debts and more." "Did Marcus believe him?" Amelia asked. "He wanted to," Mrs. Inez said. "He had just lost his father. He was 19. The bank men were at the door. Cutter brought contracts and lawyers and said, 'Sign here and your family's land is safe.' So Marcus signed." "And Annie?" Amelia's throat was tight. Mrs. Inez's eyes softened. "She was kind. She talked to me in the kitchen, helped with bread, laughed when Marcus pretended he didn't know how to dance. She didn't like closed doors either. Amelia swallowed. She found the tunnels? She asked. I think so, Mrs. Inez said. One week she asked questions. Next week they said she slipped. I washed her body myself. Her mouth tightened. Neck broken, yes, but there were bruises on her shoulders, on her wrists, like fingers. Did you tell the sheriff? Amelia demanded. The sheriff plays cards in Cutter's back room every Friday, Mrs. Inez said flatly. He came. He looked. He said it was a tragedy. He wrote accident on the report. Amelia's head spun. So you think— I think Cutter does not like loose ends, Mrs. Inez said. I think he did not like Annie asking questions, and I think he will not like you either. Silence stretched thick between them. Finally, Amelia whispered the thing that terrified her most. Is Marcus part of this? She asked. Really part of it? Or is he just weak? Mrs. Inez didn't lie. He is both, she said. He signs what Cutter puts in front of him. He looks away when the wagons come at night. But he also sits in his father's study when he thinks no one can see him, staring at that girl's photograph like it's a gravestone. Amelia thought of Marcus's tired eyes, the way he tensed at Annie's name, the way his hand had lingered just once on hers when she poured his coffee. He was not simple. He was not innocent. He was not entirely lost either. I want to stop Cutter, Amelia said. But if the sheriff is his puppet, how? That was when Mrs. Inez reached up to a loose board above the doorway, pulled it free, and handed Amelia a slim, cracked leather book. My husband was the Hale family's bookkeeper before he died, she said. He knew Mr. Hale was signing bad papers. He made copies. He said, if the wrong men ever come for me, hide this. Wait for someone brave or foolish enough to use it. Amelia opened the ledger. Rows of numbers, dates, shipments, payments. It took her a moment, but she'd spent years around factory books. She understood enough. There it was. HC for Harlan Cutter, with enormous sums beside his initials. MH for Marcus Hale, numbers far smaller, and other initials. One made her stop. CV. Who is CV? Amelia asked. I do not know, Mrs. Inez said. Name has never come to the house. Amelia did know, because miles and miles away, back in Boston, there was exactly one person she knew whose initials were CV, who just happened to have the authority Cutter couldn't buy. Her cousin, Clara Vance, Deputy United States Marshal. And that was the moment Amelia stopped being just a bride with a bad feeling and became the one person who could drag Cutter's tunnels into the light. That afternoon, Amelia sat at the big oak desk in Marcus's father's old study. The ledger lay open beside her, like a guilty conscience. She took out paper, uncapped her ink, and wrote, Clara, I know we have not written in some time. You will think I am exaggerating. I wish that I were. I believe men connected to the railroad are using my husband's land to run illegal tunnels and mines. She didn't put Marcus's name on paper. She didn't put Cutter's either. Instead, she carefully copied 2 pages from the ledger, every date, every number, every set of initials, on a separate sheet. If someone intercepted the letter, the copies alone wouldn't prove anything. But in the right hands, combined with what she'd seen in those tunnels, they might be enough to bring law from outside Cutter's reach. She addressed one envelope to Deputy U.S. Marshal Clara Vance, CO United States District Court Santa Fe, New Mexico Territory. She addressed another more generally to the court clerk, in case Clara was away. Then she did something small but clever. She wrote a third letter to her father in Boston. Ordinary news, no mention of tunnels. She sealed that one openly, because if she walked into the post with no family letters, it would look strange. And at this point, every choice had to look ordinary. The town was half a day's ride away. Marcus thought she was spending that day going over house ledgers with Mrs. Inez. Instead, Amelia saddled the bay mare and told Mrs. Inez, I'll be back before dark. If Marcus returns, tell him I've gone to buy sewing notions. He likes to think I'm still that helpless. Mrs. Inez only said, Stop at the blacksmith first. Tell him I sent you. He does not owe Cutter favors. The ride into town felt like riding with a target strapped to her back. Every wagon she passed, every rider coming the other way. She waited for someone to stop her, ask what she was carrying, tell her to turn around. No one did. The blacksmith's forge glowed hot at the edge of town, iron ringing. The blacksmith, Tomas, wiped his forehead when she came up. "You are Hale's new wife," he said, not a question. "So they tell me," Amelia said. "Mrs. Inez said you could be trusted." His eyes sharpened. "That depends who you need protection from," he said. "Harlan Cutter," Amelia replied quietly. His jaw flexed. "Then yes," he said. "You can be trusted if you're still standing here." She explained what she needed. 2 letters sent by a route Cutter's men didn't control. Tomas jerked his chin toward a lanky teenage boy sweeping in the corner. "Ben runs supplies to the army post twice a week," he said. "Their mail goes by military courier, not Cutter's wagons. Give him your letters. He'll tuck them in the dispatch sack." Ben's eyes went wide when Amelia held out the envelopes. "These mustn't go missing," she said. "People could die if they do." "Yes, ma'am," he said, tucking them carefully inside his vest. She pressed a silver coin into his palm. "For your trouble." He looked like she'd handed him the moon. As she left, Tomas said quietly, "Mrs. Hale, men who dig in darkness don't like the sun. When you start pulling up their roots, they'll come for you. Remember, you're not the only one Cutter's hurt." She looked at the burn scars on his arm, the way he glanced toward the north, where the railroad line would go. "I'll remember," she said. She mailed the decoy letter to her father at the regular post window, buying stamps, making polite talk. Then she rode home through the dusk, the sky bleeding orange behind her. On the hill above the ranch, she looked back once. Somewhere on the road between there and Santa Fe, a boy with Amelia's letters was heading toward a woman who'd once told Amelia, "If you ever see men doing in the open what they think they've hidden well, write me." Clara Vance had kept that promise once before. Amelia could only hope she would again. 3 weeks passed. Nothing happened. Outside, anyway. Inside the house, everything changed. Amelia started keeping the ranch books in earnest. Marcus had always been sloppy with numbers. He preferred fence posts and cattle to columns and sums. "Always hated figures," he muttered, dropping a stack of receipts on the desk. "If you want them to add up, they're yours." She did want them to add up. They didn't. There were payments that made sense: feed, wages, wagon repairs. Then there were payments that didn't: equipment rental for sums larger than the yearly feed bill, consulting fees paid to initials she recognized from the secret ledger, and line items marked only with symbols, a little tunnel drawn beside a number, a pickaxe instead of a word. Marcus signed beside all of them, his name a scrawl. One night storm clouds piled thick over the plains. Lightning flashed. Amelia woke to an empty bed. She found Marcus in the study, sitting in the half-dark, turning a small photograph over and over in his hand. Annie. When he saw Amelia in the doorway, he stiffened. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Storm." "So you came in here to look at her," Amelia said before she could stop herself. His eyes flashed. "This was her house before it was yours," he said quietly. "I don't forget the dead because the living arrive." That stung, but beneath the anger in his voice, there was something else. Guilt. Fear. "I know about the tunnels," Amelia said abruptly. The words dropped between them like a stone into a well. Marcus's hand tightened around the photograph. "What did you say?" he asked softly. "I know what's under this house," Amelia said. "I've been down there. I heard Cutter's men. I know about the shipments, and I know Annie's accident wasn't an accident at all." For a second, she thought he might deny it, might laugh, might throw her out. Instead, he laughed once, a bitter, empty sound. "You think you know," he said. "You've been here, what, a month? You ride into my life on a stagecoach and think you can fix what's been broken for years. How long have you been letting Cutter use this land?" Amelia asked. "How many papers have you signed without reading? How many wagons came at night while you pretended not to hear? He slammed his fist on the desk. You think I wanted this? He snapped. My father signed the first contracts. Then he ended up trampled to death. Cutter waved debts in my face, said if I didn't keep the deal, he'd take the ranch, the hands, Mrs. Inez, everyone out. You know what happens to people with nowhere to go out here? Yes, Amelia said. I also know what happens to women who get in the way. They stared at each other, thunder rumbling. You don't understand what Cutter is, Marcus said. You send one letter to one marshal and think suddenly men like him answer to you. I didn't send one letter, Amelia said. I sent 3. To Clara, to the territorial court, to anyone who'd listen. And they have something you and Cutter don't, authority that doesn't stop at the county line. Marcus stared at her. You wrote to your cousin, he said slowly. The marshal. Yes, Amelia said. Because someone has to stop this. And if you're not going to, I will. You had no right, he said, voice raw. You've put a target on this house, on me, on yourself. There was already a target on this house the night Annie died. Amelia shot back. I'm just refusing to paint a smiley face around it. For a heartbeat, they were just 2 stubborn people from very different worlds, furious and terrified in equal measure. Then something cracked in Marcus's expression. He sank into the chair. You think I don't see her when I close my eyes? He whispered. Annie, neck twisted, body broken. Sheriff saying accident while Cutter watched from the doorway. You think I don't know what that word meant coming from his mouth? Silence. I didn't push her, he said. I swear to you, Amelia, I didn't. But I didn't stop the man who did. And every day since, I've been signing my name, hoping it would buy us enough time that maybe, somehow, that would mean something. Time for what? She asked softly. I don't know, he said. For someone to come along who wasn't afraid. He looked up at her then. Amelia realized he didn't just mean some lawman or some banker. He meant her. What do you need? He asked finally, voice rough. It was the first time he'd asked that about anything that mattered. I need every map you have of those tunnels, Amelia said. Every name of every man Cutter's brought onto this land, and I need you to stop pretending you can't read the numbers in front of you. He gave a short, humorless laugh. You think I keep maps? He said. Cutter isn't that stupid. The only man who ever mapped those tunnels died 2 months ago, crushed in a roof collapse. The others, they keep it in their heads. Then we start over, Amelia said. We make our own map, and when Clara gets here, she'll take it, and you, and either she'll drag Cutter into court, or she'll drag your name there beside his. Up to you. He stared at her. Clara's not coming, he said finally, like he wanted it to be true. People like that don't ride into storms for girls who run away west. Lightning flashed so bright it lit the whole room, and as if the weather was answering him, hoofbeats pounded up the front road. Fast, urgent. Not the steady clop of a neighbor's visit. Marcus grabbed his rifle. Amelia grabbed her pistol. They moved through the dark house like conspirators. At the front door, Marcus called, "Who's there?" The answer came over the rain, clear and loud and female. Deputy United States Marshal Clara Vance. Open the door, Marcus Hale. We need to talk about the tunnels under your house. Every hair on Amelia's arm stood up. Marcus looked at her. You weren't wrong, he muttered. He lifted the bar. He opened the door. And there she was, soaked, hat brim dripping, badge gleaming at her chest, eyes taking in everything. Amelia, Clara said, you picked the worst places to go courting, you know that? Clara didn't waste time. She stepped into the foyer like she owned the place. I got your letters, she told Amelia, shrugging off her coat. All 3, and the ledger copies. You were right not to name names. For all you knew, the clerk in Santa Fe played cards with Cutter, too. Marcus bristled. You come into my house accusing my wife of... Clara held up a hand. Mr. Hale, I don't care what you thought your wife was, she said. I care what you signed, because that ledger she copied matches statements from 3 other ranches Cutter's pulled this trick on. Yours just happens to have one extra feature. She tilted her head toward the kitchen. The tunnels. Marcus said nothing. Amelia stepped forward instead. "I've been down there," she said. "I heard his men. I saw dynamite crates. There's a word carved into one beam. Run." I think Annie left it. Clara's jaw ticked. "Cutter's been running illegal side mines along the proposed railroad route," she said. "Pays off local sheriffs. Claims the ore came from legal wells. The territorial prosecutor's been trying to pin him for a year, but he's slippery. Your ledger, Mrs. Hale, is the first time we've seen his initials tied, on paper, to underground work on private land before the railroad's even approved." "So what now?" Amelia asked. "You blast the tunnels, drag him to court, because his men are already talking about last charges and clearing veins before federal men show up." Clara's gaze sharpened. "Which means he knows we're close," she said. "He'll want to erase evidence, including inconvenient wives." She looked Marcus dead in the eye. "And husbands," she added. Marcus swallowed. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Access," Clara said simply. "You'll walk me through every part of this property Cutter's touched. We'll map what we can before he blows it. Mrs. Hale, you'll show me where you heard the men and where you saw the warning. Mrs. Inez will tell me anything she has on the sheriff and Cutter's visits. And all three of you will do exactly what I say, because once Cutter figures out I'm here, he won't come himself." She glanced out at the dark yard. "He'll send someone to make this look like an accident. Remember that, because that accident almost killed all of them. They went down into the tunnels together that night." Clara led, lantern in one hand, revolver in the other. Amelia followed, chalk in her fingers, marking turns on the walls as they went. Marcus brought up the rear with a second lantern and a rifle. The underworld of the ranch unfolded around them. Main shafts, side passages, crude rails where ore carts had run, empty dynamite crates stacked against walls. At one junction, Clara paused. "Hold up," she said. "Hear that?" Faintly, through the packed earth, came a sound. Scrape, drag, murmurs. "Men?" Amelia whispered. "On the other side of that wall, maybe." "We pull back," Clara said. "We've seen enough for tonight. Tomorrow, in daylight, I'll ride back to town, send a wire to Santa Fe. We'll have federal warrants by week's end." They turned. Clara's lamp revealed something Amelia hadn't noticed coming in. A thin wire, taut against the ceiling, running along the beam overhead. Clara's eyes narrowed. "Stop," she said sharply. She reached up carefully, traced the wire with her fingers. "It runs to that support," she said, nodding at a beam ahead. Fresh tool marks. Disturbed earth at its base. Collapse line, crude but effective. Cut it, and this section of tunnel comes down. "On who?" Marcus asked, voice tight. Clara looked at him. "On whoever they tricked into walking down here first," she said. "Probably you, once they're done getting your last signatures." Amelia's mouth went dry. "Can you disarm it?" she whispered. "Maybe." Clara's lips pressed thin. "But this isn't our only problem. Wires mean planning. Planning means they know we're a threat, or think we might be." As if the tunnels themselves wanted to answer her, a distant rumble shook the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Time to go," Clara said. "Now." They moved fast, following Amelia's chalk marks. Behind them, another rumble, this one closer. A beam groaned. Marcus shouted, "Run!" They did. Amelia's lantern went out as a gust of air blasted past them. Earth shaking, noise roaring, a section of tunnel collapsing somewhere behind. She stumbled. Marcus grabbed her arm, hauled her forward. They burst up into the pantry just as a low section of the tunnel caved in, the sound booming through the ground. The trapdoor jolted under their feet. For a second, the kitchen floor seemed to float. Then it settled. Silence. Then, from outside, shouts, hooves, someone yelling, "What was that?" Clara's eyes stayed on the pantry floor. "He rushed it," she said. "Who?" Amelia panted, heart pounding. "Cutter," Clara said. "He set those wires expecting to bring down proof at his leisure. But when I rode into town, the telegraph operator wired someone he shouldn't. So Cutter told his men, 'Do it now.' They just didn't realize we were standing on top of their fuse." Emilia swallowed hard. "That could have killed us," she said. Clara finally looked up. "That was meant to kill us," she said. "Or at least make sure that when they came to check on you, they'd find 3 bodies and a convenient story about unstable ground." Marcus looked rattled. Really rattled. "He tried to murder us in my own house?" he said numbly. Clara's gaze was flint. "Welcome to what Cutter's been doing to a lot of people in less pretty ways," she said. "The difference is, you still have a roof over your head." "For now," Mrs. Inez said from the doorway. She'd heard it all. "But for how long?" Clara holstered her gun. "Long enough," she said, "if we make the next move before he does." That night, Clara outlined the plan. It wasn't complicated. Complicated plans got people killed. Clara would ride at first light to the nearest telegraph office that wasn't Cutter-controlled. The one Tomas had told her about. 2 towns over, where the operator's brother was in the army. She'd wire her superior in Santa Fe. Ledger copies confirmed, illegal tunneling observed, attempted murder via controlled collapse. Federal warrants would be issued not just for unknown parties, but with Cutter's name on them, tied to the ledger, the payments, and the attempt to destroy evidence. Meanwhile, Emilia and Marcus had one job: stay alive and keep the remaining tunnels intact until the marshals could seize them as evidence. "Do not go down there again without me," Clara said, leaning over the kitchen table. "Do not meet Cutter alone. Do not let his men into this house unless they come with a piece of paper signed by a judge, sheriff or no sheriff." "What about the sheriff?" Emilia asked. "He's in Cutter's pocket." Clara's mouth curved grimly. "Sheriff's badge means nothing if I walk in front of him with papers from higher up," she said. "He can bluster. He can threaten. He steps out of line. He can share a cell with Cutter." Marcus frowned. "And if Cutter decides not to wait for warrants?" he asked. "If he rides up here tomorrow with a dozen men and says the tunnels are his to blast?" "Then you'll stall," Clara said. "Say you want to talk face to face. Say your new wife's made you nervous. Say whatever keeps him on the porch, because I promise you something, Marcus Hale. If Cutter comes here in broad daylight, guns on his hip, and I walk back into this yard with federal marshals while he's still standing on your property, that will be the worst decision he ever made." It sounded almost too simple. Wait. Stall. Trust. Emilia lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd just tied her fate to a plan built on wires and words. By morning, she had her answer. Because Cutter didn't send a dozen men. He came himself. The sun was barely above the horizon when dust plumes appeared on the road. 6 riders. One at the front in a dark coat and fine hat. Harlan Cutter. He rode like a man who assumed everyone would get out of his way. Emilia watched from the upstairs window as he swung down from his horse on her front lawn like it was a stage. 2 of his men she recognized from the tunnel by silhouette alone. Tall scarf and crooked nose, now in daylight. Marcus squared his shoulders at the door. He didn't reach for his rifle. "Let me," he told Emilia, quietly. "If he sees you defying him right away, he might start shooting before we hear Clara's horse." She hated it. But he was right. She stayed at the top of the stairs where she could hear everything. Cutter didn't bother knocking. He opened the door like the house were already his and stepped inside, boots clicking on the floorboards. "Marcus," he said pleasantly. "Storm last night almost took my roof clean off. Must have shaken yours too. I heard there was a disturbance." His eyes scanned the hallway. They didn't rest on Emilia's face, hidden in shadow, but she could feel them like a physical touch. "Something shifted," Marcus said evenly. "Ground moved, old cellars, unstable, could have killed us." Cutter smiled like that amused him. "Shame if that happened," he said. "I've invested quite a bit in you not dying, Marcus." Emilia's skin crawled. Cutter walked farther into the house, looking around. "Your new wife settling in?" he asked. "Haven't had a chance to send my congratulations." "She's doing fine," Marcus said. Cutter's gaze snapped to the second-floor landing then, like he'd known she was there. "Mrs. Hale," he called. "Come down, if you would. I like to meet the people I'm invested in." Emilia forced her feet to move. She came down the stairs one step at a time, every instinct screaming. Up close, Harlan Cutter didn't look like a villain in a dime novel. He had clean hands, a watch chain. Beneath his polite smile, eyes that never warmed. "Pleasure," he said, extending a hand. "Likewise," Amelia lied, keeping her own folded. For a moment, their gazes locked. She saw recognition there. He'd known women like her, curious, educated just enough to be dangerous, brought west by desperation. He turned back to Marcus. "Storms like that can be clarifying," he said. "Make a man think about what he's standing on. Earth shifts. Contracts change. Maybe it's time we simplify our arrangement." Every word sounded harmless. Every word was a threat. Marcus's voice stayed calm. "What kind of simplification did you have in mind?" he asked. Cutter pulled a sheet of paper from his coat. "Deed transfer," he said lightly. "You sign this, I take full responsibility for whatever's under this house. Tunnels or accidents. You keep a modest portion of the land, surface only. Hands can stay on as workers. You and your bride go on pretending you're simple ranch folk. And if anyone ever comes asking questions, I say you knew nothing. Wasn't that always the truth you wanted, Marcus?" Amelia's heart pounded. He was offering Marcus a way out, at the cost of handing Cutter full legal control of the crime scene. If Marcus signed that paper, every tunnel collapse, every accident, every stolen shipment would be on Cutter's terms alone. No evidence, no leverage, no justice. "I'd need time to read that," Marcus said slowly. Cutter laughed. "You? Read?" he said. "Marcus, my boy, you've never cared about the little words. That's why we get along so well." He held out a pen. Marcus didn't take it. "I've learned a few new things," Marcus said, "starting with not signing my name on stories I don't understand." Cutter's eyes cooled. "Is that so?" he said softly. "And who taught you such wisdom? Your mail-order bride?" Amelia met his gaze. "I've seen ledgers before," she said. "Factories in Boston run on them. Strange how the numbers for equipment start matching the numbers for missing boys, if you pay attention." Cutter's smile didn't change, but something hard flickered behind it. "You've been busy, Mrs. Hale," he said. "She wrote to the marshals," Tall Scarf blurted, then bit his tongue too late. Cutter didn't even look at him. "I assumed as much," he said. "Telegraph lines hum louder than any tunnel, you know." Amelia's throat tightened. So he knew. Clara was out there somewhere, riding toward a telegraph in the other direction. Cutter was here, between them. He tucked the deed back into his coat. "Well," he said, "if we can't handle this like friends, we'll handle it like businessmen." He snapped his fingers. Tall Scarf and Crooked Nose stepped forward, hands on their guns. "Marcus Hale," Cutter said, "you're under, let's call it private arrest, for breaching our contract. You and your wife will come with me. Sheriff will hold you while we sort this out. Tunnels are clearly too unstable for you to be hosting guests on top of them." He said it like he was doing them a favor. Marcus's jaw clenched. Amelia's mind raced. If they left this property with Cutter, whatever came next wouldn't involve a courtroom. It would involve an accidental fall off a cliff. A tragic wagon tipping. 2 more names whispered in town. She swallowed. "We'll need a moment to gather our things," she said. "A change of clothes, important papers. You wouldn't want your investment showing up in town looking like fugitives." Cutter studied her. He thought he was the only one who knew how to stall. 10 minutes, he said. "And if you try to run—" "Where would we go?" she said, glancing pointedly at the flat horizon. "This is all we have." He held her gaze a beat longer, then nodded once and stepped back outside to supervise his men. The door closed. Marcus turned to her. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Buying time," she said. "Clara will see his riders from a mile away. She'll follow. But we need to make sure when he tries to erase those tunnels, he traps himself in the process." "Amelia!" "Do you trust me?" she demanded. He hesitated. Then, finally, "Yes." "Then listen carefully," she said. Cutter thinks he's the only one who can pull a wire. Here's what Cutter didn't know. When that section of tunnel collapsed the night before, it hadn't just shaken walls, it had shaken Marcus. After Clara went to saddle her horse in the pre-dawn, Marcus and Amelia had gone back to the pantry. They'd lifted the trap door just enough to look. Sections of the tunnel had caved, others held. One support beam, half cracked, leaned at an angle over a main shaft. Clara had pointed to it before she rode off. If someone pulls that at the right moment, she'd said, they'll bring down half the network from that junction outward. Anyone standing there, she tapped the map they'd drawn on the table, will be buried. But it'll leave this section, near the house, mostly intact. Enough for proof. Isn't that dangerous? Amelia had asked. Only if the wrong person is holding the rope, Clara had said. Now, with Cutter waiting outside, Amelia grabbed Marcus's arm. If we go with him, she said, he'll drag us down there at gunpoint, walk us to the center, and blow it all to hell. Us included. If we refuse to go, he'll blast it from a distance and say it was an accident. Either way, the tunnels go on his schedule. Marcus's brow furrowed. What are you suggesting? He asked. We set our own schedule, Amelia said, on Clara's terms. Make sure the only man standing at that weak point when it comes down is Cutter. Marcus stared at her. You're talking about killing him, he said quietly. I'm talking about pulling the rope he tied around his own neck, Amelia said. He's already tried to drop a tunnel on us once. You want to give him another chance? His jaw tightened. How? He asked. Fast, direct, the way she needed him to. She explained in a low, urgent voice. Cutter wanted to take them into the tunnels as witnesses to their own erasure. Fine, they'd go. Marcus would insist on showing Cutter the worst damage, under the pretense of proving the tunnels were too unstable for anyone to work. Amelia would make sure they passed the cracked beam junction Clara had marked. At that point, Mrs. Inez, who knew the tunnels as well as anyone, from years of hearing them dug under her floor, would be waiting at a second trap door in the barn. With the rope. One pull. One collapse. The trick would be making sure only Cutter and his closest men were under that beam. Not Marcus, not Amelia, not anyone else. It was a terrible plan. It was also the only one that made sense, unless they wanted to sit in the parlor and wait to be shot. Marcus nodded once. I'll get him where we need him, he said. You signal Mrs. Inez. She knows more about this place than I ever have. They moved. Amelia ran to the kitchen, found Mrs. Inez. In 3 whispered sentences, she laid it out. The older woman went pale. Madre de Dios, she muttered. You are more dangerous than any man Cutter ever met. Will you do it? Amelia asked. Mrs. Inez looked at her, then at the ceiling. At my age, she said, hell cannot be much hotter than the kitchen. She grabbed a lantern. They went separate ways. Back at the door, Amelia and Marcus presented themselves like resigned prisoners. Cutter approved. That was what he understood. Submission. Good, he said. We'll take the back way. Less likely to spook the horses. You can point out any weak points as we go. As a courtesy. He thought he was being gracious. Marcus took a lantern. This way, he said, leading them through the kitchen. One of Cutter's men raised an eyebrow at the pantry. Cellar entrance under the kitchen, Marcus said smoothly. Convenient for supplies. Shame about the storm damage. They descended. Amelia behind Marcus, Cutter behind her, tall scarf and crooked nose behind him. 2 more men waited above, guarding the house. Perfect. In the tunnel, Cutter's civilized tone slipped. Ugly work, but profitable, he said, running a finger along the wall. You'd have been rich if you'd kept your wife's nose out of it, Marcus. You'd have been in prison already if you'd kept your men's hands off mine, Marcus said. Cutter chuckled. You think a marshal scares me? He asked. I've bought judges before, and if that doesn't work, accidents happen on the frontier every day. They reached the junction. Amelia's chalk marks glowed faintly under the lantern light. There was the half-cracked beam Clara had shown them, sagging just slightly. Marcus paused. Here, he said, Storm hit worst along this line. See that? He pointed at the cracked base. Whole thing's ready to go. We should turn back. Cutter stepped forward, examining it. Looks fine to me, he said. You're jumpier than your letters implied. His men snickered. Amelia's heart hammered. This was the moment. She looked up, eyes searching the ceiling as if just now noticing something. Is that rope? She said, frowning. Cutter followed her gaze. His eyes traced the wire Clara had rewoven into a simple cord, leading up toward a second access hatch, one only Mrs. Inez used, in the barn. Cutter's mouth thinned. Paranoid, aren't you? He said. Setting your own traps. He stepped under the beam to get a better look. Behind him, tall scarf and crooked nose shuffled in closer. Marcus took one small step back, close enough to Amelia that she could feel his shoulder brush hers. If he looks up any higher, he'll see, she began. The ground shuddered. A low, tearing sound ripped through the tunnel. For half a second, everything held. Then the cracked beam gave way. The ceiling came down like an ocean of earth. Amelia didn't see Cutter's face as the roof collapsed on him. She saw Marcus's arm slam into her, shoving her down a side culvert Clara had identified as just deep enough to survive. She felt a wall of air and dust punch past. She heard men scream, and then she didn't hear them at all. Darkness, silence, then groaning. Not from Cutter, from the tunnel itself. Marcus coughed beside her, half buried in dirt up to his waist. "Amelia?" he rasped. "You alive?" She spat grit. "Yes," she gasped. "You?" He shifted. "Mostly," he said. "Can you move?" She could, barely. Digging with her hands, she clawed enough space to roll, then reached for him. Overhead, somewhere beyond tons of collapsed rock, a faint voice was yelling, "Amelia! Marcus! Clara!" They shouted back. It took an hour to clear enough space to drag them out. By the time they emerged into the pantry, coughing and filthy, the sun was higher in the sky. Federal marshals stood in the kitchen, badges bright, guns visible. Cutter's men, those who'd stayed above ground, were on their knees in the yard, hands tied. Tomasz the blacksmith stood by the door, watching, eyes wide. "Marshal Vance," the sheriff sputtered, face red. "You can't just—" Clara held up a bundle of papers. "Territorial warrants," she said, "signed by Judge Harrington, authorizing search and seizure of this property's underground works and arrest of Harlan Cutter on charges of fraud, illegal mining, and attempted murder." The sheriff's mouth opened and closed. "Where is Cutter?" one of the other marshals asked. Clara's jaw tightened. "Under a lot of rock," she said. "He tried to erase his crime scene. The crime scene erased him first." The marshal nodded once. "Accidental justice," he said. "Self-inflicted," Clara corrected. "Document it that way." For weeks afterward, the ranch looked like a battlefield. Men in official coats measured tunnels. They hauled up ore, dynamite, tools. They brought in surveyors, scribes, government inspectors. Amelia gave statements until her throat was raw. She told them everything, the ad that brought her west. The tunnels she'd seen, the voices she'd heard, the word carved, run the ledger Mrs. Inez had hidden. She didn't lie to spare Marcus. She also didn't damn him unnecessarily. "I think he wanted to believe he had no choice," she told the court. "But he still chose not to see what was under his own feet. That's its own kind of guilt." Marcus didn't try to excuse himself. When the marshals asked, he handed over every paper Cutter had ever made him sign. When the judge in Santa Fe sent questions, Marcus answered them in his own clumsy writing, not letting Amelia or anyone else pretty it up. "I signed what he put in front of me," he wrote. "I thought if I kept the ranch, I could make up for what he did. I was wrong." Cutter's other victims came out of the woodwork, ranchers from farther up the line, widows with ruined wells, former workers with crushed hands and crushed families. With Cutter dead and his papers seized, men who'd been too afraid to speak suddenly had nothing left to lose. The trial in Santa Fe became less about whether Harlan Cutter was guilty, he very clearly was, and more about how big his fallout would be. The railroad company distanced itself from him. They tore up contracts. They paid fines. They denied knowing. The judge didn't fully believe them. In the end, Cutter's estate was seized. His accounts were used to pay restitution to the people he'd cheated and harmed. The tunnels under Marcus's land were condemned. Some were filled. One section, right under the kitchen, where the carved word still scarred the beam, was preserved as evidence. Amelia stood in that short, grim corridor one last time with Clara, lantern light flickering over the 3 carved letters. "Run," Clara read softly. "You think she did?" Amelia swallowed. "I think she tried," she said, "long enough to carve a warning for the next woman." Clara put a hand on the beam. "Well," she said, "good news is the next woman didn't just run, she fought." She looked at Amelia. "And she won." You're probably wondering, what happened to Amelia and Marcus? Did she stay? Did she leave? Here's the thing. Surviving something like that doesn't put you neatly in love. It puts you in truth. When the dust settled, Marcus was offered a choice by the court. He could be charged as a full co-conspirator and risk prison, or he could testify against every other man who'd signed similar contracts for Cutter, hand over control of his land's subsurface rights to the government, and accept a reduced sentence: probation, supervision, financial oversight. He chose the second. For the first time in his life, he read every line before he signed. Amelia watched him. When he put the pen down, he turned to her. "I can't ask you to stay on land that's soaked in this much blood," he said. "If you want to go back east, I'll sell what's left of my portion. You'll have enough to live comfortably. Aunt Inez will come with you if you ask." She thought about Boston. Smoke, noise, the factory hum. She thought about the tunnels, the word run, the fact that she hadn't. She thought about the way Marcus had looked at her in the dark when he'd said, "What do you need?" and meant it. She thought about Clara, already packing for her next case, standing in the yard with her badge catching the sun, grinning like she just cracked the biggest one of her career. And Amelia realized something. She didn't want to go back east and pretend none of this had ever happened. She didn't want to just be Mrs. Hale, either. She wanted something else entirely. "I don't think I want to be anyone's quiet wife," she said finally. "Not yours. Not anyone's." Marcus's face fell a little. Then he nodded. "I understand," he said. "You never have been." "But," she added, "this place isn't just tunnels and lies. There are families here, hands who've worked this land longer than you've signed it away. If you're willing to rebuild it honestly, I'll stay, as your partner, in business, in whatever this is, until it isn't working for either of us." He blinked. "That's not exactly the proposal I sent to Boston," he said. She smiled, just a little. "The man who wrote those letters doesn't exist anymore," she said. "Neither does the girl who read them." He considered that. Then he said carefully, "If one day you decide being my wife fits better than partner in legal and moral reconstruction, I'd be honored to ask again, properly." She looked out over the land. Dug up, marked, healing. "We'll see," she said. "Ask me again when the tunnels are only memory." As for Clara, she rode out a week later with a new case file, a heavier badge, and a reputation for being the marshal who finally dragged Cutter's network down. Before she left, she pulled Amelia aside. "You have a knack," she said, "for seeing what's really going on behind men's polite words. You ever get tired of ranch dust, there's a place for someone like you in my line of work." "Chasing criminals?" Amelia asked. "Chasing truth," Clara said. "Criminals are just side effects." Amelia looked at Marcus talking with Tomas, at Mrs. Inez supervising repairs, at the stubborn, scarred land under a sky too big to ignore. "I think I have enough of that here for now," she said. "But keep a spare badge warm for me." Clara laughed. "Done," she said. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "If you ever see someone carving 'run' into a wall again, don't just run. Burn the wall down." Amelia grinned. "That," she said, "I can promise. So." To the people who say mail-order brides were just tragic girls used as props in other people's stories, tell them about Amelia Price, the woman who answered an ad to get away from one kind of exploitation, only to find herself standing on top of a crime big enough to swallow her whole, and then chose not just to run, but to pull the whole rotten thing down with her. If you want more true-style stories like this, where the romance is tangled up with danger and the happy ending looks more like justice than a wedding, you know what to do. Hit follow, because there are a lot more tunnels under a lot more houses than most people want to admit.